Yo, what's going on, people? In this video, we're going to talk about setting up Bitcoin Core on a virtual private server and doing basically a manual installation. So we'll set up a Bitcoin node on a virtual private server on a cloud computer. One of the easiest ways to do this is just use any cloud service provider, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, whatever you want to use. If you have your own procedure for setting up a remote server, go ahead and do that. But in this video, we're going to set up a virtual private server using DigitalOcean. So I'll leave a link in the description to my referral code, which I think will give you like the first month for free or credit your account with $50. I can't quite remember, but either way, I think essentially you'll be able to do this for free. So have a look in the description, click the referral link and create an account with DigitalOcean. And so once you've created an account with DigitalOcean and you've verified your email address and all that good stuff, you will come across a dashboard that will enable you to set up what DigitalOcean call a droplet, which is just essentially a server sitting in the cloud somewhere. And so the first thing we can create a new project. So if we click on this left hand side and click new project, let's name this project I don't know, Bitcoin command line, but you can name it anything you want. We don't need a description for now, and the purpose of this is, let's say, educational purpose, and create project. Move resources into Bitcoin command line. We can skip this for now, we don't need to do that. And so okay, we've created our project. The next thing we need to do is actually set up the server. So if we click get started with a droplet, so there are a number of different installations you can use for when setting up Bitcoin Core, and we'll talk about those a bit later on in this video. But essentially there is the mainnet, there is a pruned mainnet, there's a testnet, there's a pruned testnet, and there's one more, and a reg test network I think as well. And the difference between a lot of these, I guess, installations is the amount of blocks that you basically download and use for validation. So for the purposes of this course, we'll just use the testnet for now, and that should be like sufficient for us to have a play around and set up our playground for getting to know Bitcoin a bit better. And so the requirements for your machine, you'll probably need, for an unpruned testnet setup, you need at least 2 to 3 gigs of memory and at least 19 gigabytes of storage. I think the mainnet at the moment, based on like the number of blocks and stuff that are in the chain at the minute, is about 120 gigabytes. So the testnet is significantly smaller, and so it requires a lot less memory and storage. So what we can do is we can set up a machine now. So for this course, I recommend using the Debian distribution of Linux. So 9.7 should be fine. We'll choose a standard plan, is also fine, and we'll choose a plan that gives us enough storage and memory. So we can go for the $20 a month plan. Remember, there's the link in the description and you shouldn't have to really pay anything. So 4 gigabytes of memory and 8 gigabytes of solid state drive and 4 terabytes for transfer, so that should be okay. In terms of region, I don't think it matters too much, but I'm in London, so I'll click London. In terms of logging in, so we can leave, we'll leave one-time password for now. And what this will do is, once you've set up your machine, DigitalOcean will email you a password which you can use to log into your machine. But once we do that, we're actually going to set up our SSH keys, but we're going to do that manually via the command line. So how many droplets do we want? We just want the one droplet, and we can give the host name a bit of a nicer name. So maybe we can call it my-btc. And then we don't need to add any tags, and we want to associate it with this project. We don't need to worry about backups for now either. And then we just go ahead and click create droplet. Cool, so you can see the droplets being created there. It's just taking a little bit of time to load. In the meantime, you can probably head over to your email to get the one-time password. So I'll do that now. Okay, so as you can see here, this is our machine now set up. We've got 4 GB of RAM and 80 GB of disk space, and this is our IP address which we'll use to SSH into our machine. If you don't know what SSH is, don't worry, I'll explain that in a minute. So if we click into our installation, there's not really much of there's not anything of great interest here. It just gives us a little bit of details about our machine and what project within DigitalOcean it's associated with, and what IP versions are supported, etc, etc. Now that we have our machine set up and running, we can head over to the terminal and try and connect to it remotely. So if you're on a Mac, and I think the shell should work similarly on Linux and Windows machine as well, but I'm using a Mac for this video in this course. So if you type command space, it will open a Spotlight terminal. I do have a command line shell called iTerm, but for this purposes, it just allows you to customize your terminal a bit more. But for this, the built-in terminal on the Mac is fine. So if you just type in terminal and open your terminal like this, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger just so we can see it and make it full screen. So we're gonna connect to our virtual private server using a secure protocol called SSH. So in order to do that, we need our username and our IP address. So we'll just type SSH, and the email DigitalOcean would have sent you would have your username, and for the initial installation it's usually root. So root will be your username, at, and then the IP address, which you can be found in your project settings. So if you just go ahead and copy that and head back to your terminal and copy and paste that in. And then it will ask you for your password. That should be in the email DigitalOcean sent you. So logging in here, we'll just copy our password in. And now it's asking, because it's the first time you've logged into the machine, it's asking you to change the password for root, I guess just for security reasons. So copy and paste or type in that initial password that you were sent, press enter, and then enter a new Unix password. So I'll enter a new password and then retype that password. And now I'm in. So I'll just press Command K just to make the terminal a bit cleaner. So now we're in our remote machine that we've just purchased via DigitalOcean, hosted at this IP address, just at the top here. So the next thing we can do is, this is optional as well, but it's always pretty nice to do just when you're initially set up, is we're going to set up a user or a different user for this machine. Currently we're at the root or the admin user, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to create a separate user just so we don't mess around with any of like the root configurations or anything like that. And so in order to do that, we can use this command, which I'll copy into the terminal and then explain what it's doing. So basically this is creating a new user on this machine called user1, but you can call it whatever you want. For this, we'll just leave it as user1. So enter that command. And then the second one is we want to create a password for this user, and we'll create the password as user1 for now, but We won't worry too much about passwords because we are going to log in via SSH, which will mean we won't have to use our password anyway. So we can copy that as well. So enter a new Unix password for this user. Type in another password. Same again. So now I have a password for that user as well. And then to complete the adding of that user, I'll add this last command here, which just allows our admin to create another user called user1. So that's done now, and then we have a new user called user1, but you might want to call your one something a little bit more interesting. Okay, now that we have a user set up on this machine, we're going to set up some SSH keys, which will essentially allow us to connect to our remote virtual private server without having to type our password in every time. So this part is completely optional, and you can fast forward if you want to, but it's quite a nice to have. So it will just mean every time you connect to your machine, you will get logged in straight away, and it's just a bit quicker and a bit more convenient. So the first steps to doing this is to on your local machine or your client machine, create an RSA key pair. So we're currently still in our VPS, my BTC. So to close the connection, we'll just type exit, and that logs you out and removes your connection to that machine. So now we're in our local terminal on our machine, and you can see that here. And so the first thing we want to do to create our SSH keys is to type the SSH keygen command. So that goes SSH-keygem-t RSA. And this says generating public and private RSA key pair. And these are the key pairs that will allow you to securely log into your VPS. And it creates a file for you at your user's username .ssh id_RSA. So if we press enter, so I actually already have an SSH keys set up for various things like GitHub and connecting to VPSs that I'm using to just do different things. So for this, I'll just overwrite my current keys by typing Y. So you need to enter a secure passphrase as well. So type something that's lengthy and has numerical as well as symbolic values as well. So I'll type in mine. And you have to enter your passphrase twice. Cool. So this has now created a fingerprint for us and created our SSH keys. And then, so once the key pair is generated, it's time to place the public key on the server you want to use. So that instance we've got running on with DigitalOcean. So we essentially want to copy the public key part of this pair onto the machine into like an authorized keys file. I've got a command here that I can just copy. So I'll do Command K just to make the terminal a bit cleaner. So this long and ugly command basically takes our public key, basically copies our public key into our over to our machine using that SSH command. So we're going to copy it into our user1 profile. So we type in user1, and then we're going to copy our IP address. So if I head over to DigitalOcean again and copy the IP address, whoops, don't want Bitcoin Core just yet. And then it's saying make a directory called SSH and copy all the contents from our ID RSA pub file into our authorized keys file. So if you press enter, so we'll have to enter a password still because SSH keys are not quite set up just yet. So I hope you got your password stored somewhere. So you enter that, and that has now copied over your public key to your machine. And so now, instead of having to type our password when we connect with our remote machine, we can just type. So if you press up as well, it will take you back to previous commands you've typed. So instead of root, we can connect with user 1. And as you can see there, we're logged in and we don't have to enter a password at all now. So that's pretty cool. Cool. So the next thing we need to do is we can start installing Bitcoin now. And so there's a couple of things we want to do initially to set up. What we're going to do is we're going to add some aliases, which are basically shortcut for some of these commands that we're going to be typing, because it'd be a bit much for us to type out these commands every single time we want to execute them. So the first thing we're going to do is set up some aliases. So if we copy, I'll copy this in. And so what this is doing, this is adding some aliases to our bash profile, which we can type into the command line and it will execute these commands. So the first alias is BTC dir, which I guess stands for Bitcoin directory. And this is the folder that our Bitcoin installation is basically going to be hosted, or the path to our Bitcoin installation. We have an alias for BC, which is the Bitcoin CLI, which I'll explain a bit more in another video or later on in this video perhaps, which is basically what is going to allow us to run our Bitcoin related commands. We have BD, which is like the Bitcoin Daemon, which is like just to run the Bitcoin Daemon, so we can download blocks and all the rest of it. We have a BTC info alias as well, which would give us information such as like our information on the balance of our wallet. We can get some mining info as well. And I guess those are the two main bits of information we'll probably be interested in. And we also have an alias to get the blocks, or the number of blocks that we have in our current installation. So if you press enter, that should add all of the aliases for the majority of aliases that we require for this to play around with Bitcoin. The aliases you want for perhaps like a mainnet installation might be slightly different, but I think for a testnet installation this is sufficient enough. And then we want to give our user 1 permissions to this bash profile. So we just type in this command, and that gives our user access to these aliases essentially. And then this is optional as well, but basically for non-login shells we need to copy our bash profile to our bash rc file. So don't worry, all of these commands as well will be in the link in the description as well, so it's not something you need to like memorize or anything like that, but this basically copies our bash profile to our bash rc. And we can finish off by just typing this last command here. Cool, so those are our aliases set up. The next thing we want to do is we can get to a slightly more interesting bit, which is actually starting to download the Bitcoin Core client now. So in order to make the installation a little bit more easier, we're going to create some variables which one will store the current version of Bitcoin, and then the second will automatically generate a truncated form used by some of the files in the installation. So to do that, we're going to export a variable called Bitcoin, and we're going to set it to Bitcoin core dash, and then we can head over to Bitcoin Core to find the latest version. So the latest version of Bitcoin Core is 0.19.01. So we can copy that in and press enter, and then the next one is just a truncated file path which we're going to use in the installation as well. So export Bitcoin plain, we'll call this, and set it to this file path essentially. Cool. So the next thing we need to do is grab the relevant files from github.org. So we can do a wget and the name of the files that are hosted on bitcoin.org. So if we copy that in, and you can see here and here we're using our variables as opposed to having to like type those in, because Bitcoin plain is used in like 2 places here, so it's just nice for us to not have to copy that file path in twice, and press enter. And this installation should take roughly 5 minutes, so if you want to take a little break, go and have a coffee or maybe something a bit more hydrating like fruit juice, go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, cool. So we have our Bitcoin installed now, and we just need to install a couple more files. So we need the SHA-256 sum file as well, so we'll type that in. Again, we're using our Bitcoin variable to just make the installation a bit easier, so we don't have to type in the version number every time. And then the last one is I'm not quite sure what this file is, but it's basically will allow us to verify that we have a valid installation and it hasn't been tampered with in any way. So we can copy this file as well to get this. Cool. So let's clear our terminal, Command K, and let's verify that we have an authentic version of Bitcoin and it like hasn't been tampered with in any way. So our releases file will import our releases file by writing this command, and we'll also do the same for our SHA-256 sums file. Cool. And the next thing we need to do is we need to verify the hash for the Bitcoin tar file against the expected hash. So in order to do that, and then I finish off with comma at the end. Okay, cool. So this gives me a hash which I need to compare against this one. So if I copy and paste this, do enter. Okay, cool. So if we just have a quick look at these two hashes, they look pretty similar to me. So last couple of digits, 5189204, 5182114. Cool. So if you have two hashes that are equal, you have a valid installation and it hasn't been tampered with in any way. Cool. All right. So if both of your verification steps have passed, you can now install Bitcoin onto our user one profile. So again, all of these commands are in the description below, and I won't go into detail on too many of them, but if we copy this command, and then this command as well, which would be for which means our admin will give access. So for sudo password for user one, again, type that in. Cool. So let's quickly just note here. So we trust you have received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. It usually boils down to these 3 things: respect the privacy of others, think before you type, and with great power comes great responsibility. And now we can, this last command here, All right, cool. So now we need to create a Bitcoin configuration, which will be used when we run Bitcoin. But first, let's create the directory which is going to host basically the Bitcoin config file. So if we type in bin mkdir is basically make directory, and we're going to make it at the root of user 1 and call it Bitcoin. So press enter there, and now we're going to do quite a long copy and paste job here because this is a lot of things. But basically this is what our Bitcoin configuration will look like for a testnet installation essentially. So we have all of these kind of variables that will be used once we start up the Bitcoin client basically. So we've got our username for the JSON RPC connections we're gonna make. We've got what chain we want to use, so we want to use the testnet, and we've got a whole host of other values and variables that are going to be used throughout the installation, and we can go through some of them in the next video. So if you just press enter, so now we have our Bitcoin configuration file set up. We can essentially run Bitcoin now. So if I do Command K just to clear my terminal again, and we're gonna just to limit permissions to this file as well, so it doesn't get tampered with in any way, we can just type in this chmod command, which will just limit the permissions to this file as well, just to add that little bit more security. And now we want to start the Bitcoin daemon or the Bitcoin server. So to do that, we just type in this command, as that's the path to our Bitcoin installation. That's where we've installed Bitcoin, and the path anyway, and then we type in this -daemon command, and you should get back now Bitcoin core starting. And so every time we log into our VPS, we would have to run this command to get the Bitcoin server up and running. But it would be nice if we didn't have to do that, and every time we logged into our machine, it was just automatically running. So we have another beautiful, lovely command to do that as well. So I'll copy and paste this in as well. And this is basically creating a cron tab entry that will start the Bitcoin daemon every time your VPS starts. So press enter there as well. So now every time we log in, we won't have to start the daemon manually. Cool. So I think we have Bitcoin set up now. Okay, cool. So now that we have Bitcoin installed and running, the aliases that we created towards the start of the video are going to come in very handy now, and we can start making RPC calls to get different information and do different things with Bitcoin now. So one of those aliases was BTC block, and this will give us the number of blocks in the chain we have currently installed. So if you just type in BTC block, so I'm getting bash BTC block command not found, and that's I think because I've not sourced my bash profile or reloaded, for lack of a better term. So if I type in source tilde dash dot bash underscore profile, and do a command K to clean and try and type that command again, BTC block, we should get some numbers. So okay, so cool. So I've currently downloaded 93,960 blocks. Yours might be slightly different. So if I wait a couple of seconds, do a command K, do BTC block again, that number's gone up significantly to 114,114 blocks now. So those blocks are gonna be coming in over the next couple of, or consistently over the next couple of minutes, hours, days, or whatever, and that number will continuously be going up. I'm not sure how many blocks are in the testnet currently. I think last time I've done this, then it might be in the 500,000 range, but don't quote me. But that number will rise significantly. If we had like an unpruned testnet, we'd only have 550 blocks, which can be sufficient as well for like verification and stuff. So I think that's it. So I think like we're ready to get rolling now with some more interesting commands and doing some more transactional stuff. But in the next video, we'll try and understand our Bitcoin installation a bit further. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.